Hey everybody, Professor Steins here, and today I'm going to try to answer a couple questions. I get asked a lot, especially when we start talking about floats and making columns in web design, about how can we make it so that our colors are the way that we want them to be. And a lot of people end up kind of coming to this crossroads and have this situation that I'm going to explain, and hopefully we'll find some ways to work around that. So what I got here to demonstrate is just kind of a header, a nav section, a main section with a little, just a couple controls in there, nothing too much, and a footer section, and really no CSS to speak of. So one of the first rules that we started working in web design was to use a kind of an empty class equal or a class equals wrapper to kind of center everything onto the page. And that might be like a width of 90%, margin 0, auto, and maybe a max width of maybe like 720 pixels or something. So that kind of brings it into the center of the page. What I'm going to try to do is just kind of throw some colors in here to show off the different sections after this rule. So if we had maybe body and set that as a background color to maybe some sort of dark gray, and then the dot wrapper itself, maybe a background color of white, and then the header section, maybe a background color of green, footer section, background color of red, the nav section, background color of purple, and the main section be a background color of, running out of colors, blue. So let's take a look at that. As you can see, the white from the wrapper, tag, let's see if I can kind of move my screens a little bit, we can see them at the same time. The white on the wrapper tag is kind of showing underneath from these elements. So there's a little bit of margin in between these guys, and that's where these colors come together. So not fully important right now, but we'll take a look and see if we can't work on something here. So when we first start working with floats, what a lot of people will try to do is I want to float the nav to the left, maybe a width of 25%, and then the main section will also end up floating left with a width of 75%. And if I do that, things get a little bit kooky. Did I type that out right? Width, nav, main, width, yeah. So semicolon. It's like I know something there's not working right. There we go. So if we do that, a lot of times you'll end up seeing something beneath a floated container trying to wrap up. It's trying to kind of still wrap up to the right side of this one because these two containers are both floated left. So one of the things we need to do is we need to kind of clear out those floats. And perhaps the easiest way is by using the clear both statement. Essentially, anytime you use float, you kind of want to make sure that clear both is somewhere in the picture, or clear left or clear right. In this case, we want to clear the float after the main section. So I'm just going to stick an empty div class equals clear here to stop that behavior. So that'll push it back down to the bottom like that. So now the float is not trying to continually be wrapped up against main and then kind of start back over on the left side. It starts down here at the bottom where it's supposed to. These floats have been broken. So one of the other questions about when people get to this point, some of the questions ended up coming up is, well, how can I make this purple bar be as tall as this area? Because I don't really want the wrapper here, this background color, it's not really the color I want. So to answer that, and this might seem like a very hackish way of doing it, is that instead of setting purple on the nav container, if I were to set that on this container instead, the wrapper container, and not set a background color, on nav directly, it would kind of have the appearance of that. Now, I mentioned that I'm not really concerned about the margin here. It's kind of technically margin between some of these other containers. There's a thing called the Myers reset. You haven't heard me talk about it yet. It's a pretty nice little CSS file. You can kind of just copy and paste into your code or include it in a different file. If I were to kind of add this guy up at the top, kind of the first CSS to get executed, and this is really when my CSS is used from here below. It would probably fix some of those spacing issues. You don't see that purple below the red, above the green. What it's doing is it's setting essentially a lot of different containers and setting their default values back to 0, which does kind of help mitigate that. It's kind of a lot of rules. You don't have to do it exactly that way, although it's pretty helpful. When first starting out, instead of maybe trying to do that, even just setting margin and padding back to 0 can sometimes be enough to help make it work a little bit better. You can see the bullet points kind of came back there, but we could fix that if we needed to. So anyway, that would have purple go to top and bottom. If you didn't really want to do it that way, you still kind of wanted to have maybe some spacing in between, still have this background color here, maybe still have background color white there. Kind of undo what I just did. Maybe take this rule back out. Get our white liner, purple box. Another way that might be able to solve this, to kind of keep maybe a wrapper as a different background color, you'd need to add a little bit more markup into the page, and you just basically want to have a div container, and you can kind of call the class whatever you want to. But I'm going to kind of call it my grid. So I'm going to open it before the nav section, and I'm going to kind of close it after the main section here. So instead of using floats, I would probably take these two rules back out. We're not going to be floating these containers per se, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to say that my grid should display as a table, and the table layout should be fixed, width of 100%, and then I have to go back and look at the two containers and give them table cell width 25%, and main section kind of the same deal, except 75. So if I do that, what the CSS is trying to do is it's trying to keep the grid as kind of a table, and then the two ones inside of it are cells within that table. And so the behavior of that is that it kind of does the same thing, and so wrapper doesn't have to be sort of a different color. So I'm not really sure if this is going to work well in Internet Explorer, but it's probably worth checking out. I actually want to run that file though. So it looked like it was going to work there for a second, and then some other menu popped up. And I'm not so sure that this would work on fully older versions of Internet Explorer. It's one of the things that makes newer Internet Explorer much better than older Internet Explorer. When I say that, and then it kind of seems like it would work. Oh, not the... I'll change this one. Yeah, see, it doesn't quite work in IE8, IE7. It could just be the HTML5 talking. although it does work in IE9, which was the first version to support first Internet Explorer to support HTML5. So that's kind of two ways. A lot of people have trouble trying to figure out how to make that purple bar do what they want to, or how to make that column kind of do what they want to, if they want to have kind of a stronger color separation like that. And that's kind of two different ways that you could do that. So anyway, hope you find it helpful, and let me know if you have questions. Bye.